let me introduce my dear friend, and I'm so pleased to see him back looking healthier than ever after a few minor medical mishaps towards the end of last year, Mr. Craig Scarborough.
Thank you,
Craig, welcome back to the world. Welcome back to the Formula One world. And what a night. We've just seen the launch of the car.
Yep.
Your first overview of the launch and James Allison and what we saw there. And the music beforehand as well.
Yeah, very, very brief and to the point, wasn't it? There wasn't a lot covered in the, other than to unveil the car and a few little snippets from each of the key people. But good to see.
Craig, the FIA made a big deal towards the end of last year about how they would get away and eradicate the step noses from Formula One in 2012, new regulations for 13, but they're not mandatory, right? And that's kind of a strange thing.
That's right, Peter. They were somewhat unexpected to find that the teams adopted these step noses last year, and the resolution is that the teams are allowed to fit a very thin, non-structural fairing over the top of this step nose. It does weigh a little bit, and teams will find that they may or may not choose to fit one of these fairings. As we saw today, Lotus have decided at this stage of the season that they have no benefit in fitting one, and the car was launched with a step nose.
But it is a bit of a strange thing, is it not, that the FIA want to encourage the teams to move away from the step nose, and yet in reality, it's tempting to stay where you are. I mean, they either make it a rule or they don't. It's a rather strange precedent. I can't remember a situation like that in Formula One for quite a while, actually, that in terms of the way they've put that rule together.
It is a little bit unusual that they have the option, but it would be very hard to specify a set of rules that force teams with slightly different nose structures like McLaren had last year or Marussia or HRT to follow this. So, yes, we will get this odd mix of noses this year, and teams probably will change as the season progresses.
Now, I gather there was a bit of discussion before the live stream launch that we saw tonight about whether that was going to be a partner launch and or a new car launch as well. Obviously, it was both, I guess. Well, it was certainly a new car launch, and we saw a bit of new livery there. It looked to me like they had Kimi's name on the top of the engine cover there, which would suggest that well, I don't know what it suggests really, because last year I think it said Lotus on the engine cover.
That's right.
So we're not saying that they're filling space right now, but if that stays all year, that's probably quite a good thing. You know, Kimi's name, presumably Roman's name will be out of red as well, and that red is the Total element of the car. And a couple of new additions, all on the clothing side. Good to see Alpine stars there now with Kimi and Roma, and Kimi Räikkönen has to be the main Alpine Stars driver of all time. Whenever there's an Alpine Stars function, Kimi's always there. Even if he's wearing OMP or Puma or whatever he's in at the time, he will be there, or Sparker. And Kimi, this is the first time actually in his Formula One career he's actually got a proper Alpine Stars deal. And he was probably instrumental in putting that together, knowing Kimi, because behind the scenes he's always worn boots from Alpine Stars or underwear or something else that he likes. So that's good to see. And Alpine Stars, of course, also interesting, just a little snippet, but Henry Lloyd, the main clothing supplier now to Lotus F1. And I should just like to say here that it's poignant, I think, that the founder of Henry Lloyd, Henry Strelecki, hope I've got his pronunciation correct, passed away at the age of 87 in December 28 last year. So an emotional moment for everybody involved in Henry Lloyd. We didn't see Japan Rags or Trina Solar on the car, but it was kind of difficult to see from the photographs there, and we hope to see a few more stills of what was going on. And Lotus F1, obviously sponsored by Lotus, where it was called the Lotus in the unveiling. It's all a little bit unsettling when they say, let's have a look at the new Lotus. You know, us Lotus fans from years ago kind of... well, I don't know how we take that, really. But Lotus, of course, is now the sponsor of what is effectively what we knew and love as the Renault Benetton team. And Lotus coming out of a difficult time. Hopefully, they've just announced their figures for the last quarter, a loss of £115.2 million compared with 21.4 million from the previous year, and sales of the cars down too. So that's up to the end of March 2012. We don't know what the figures are from then onwards, but they're the latest figures put out by the company. And of course, that company's still without a CEO since Danny Bahar left. So a bit of a weird situation for the prime sponsor of this team. But Genie Capital Is that the right word? Genie Capital or Genie Exchange, something or other,
Genie,
business
yeah.
exchange, yeah. Always Mike Dudson said he doesn't approve of companies that generate their own letters that aren't part of the English language. But anyway, we won't go into that. The Genie Capital still very much in evidence on the car, but nobody's really sure what they do, actually. But as long as they continue to pay the bills and they own the company, I presume, that's great. That's wonderful. Anyway, we didn't actually get to see too many details. What a surprise. And here we should just add that some of the teams are being incredibly friendly and open. McLaren's launch is coming up on Thursday, and we believe there'll be quite a lot of access there. Force India as well. But Red Bull's going to be a similar thing, and Ferrari's always been a bit of a bun fight as well. I was recently up at what used to be Ilmore, Mercedes AMG high-performance mega-revving engines or whatever they call themselves. No, I'm being a little bit facetious there, but they've got a great title. I wish I could remember it. And they took away all our mobile phones as we began the tour of the factory. Not even allowed to take a mobile phone. So that's what it's like now in this busy world of Formula One. But Craig, from what you saw of the car, first of all, let's talk about the side pods, the all-important side pods. What's going on there?
Last year, if we remember, Lotus were very late to blowing the diffuser with the exhaust. They had what we would call a periscope-style exhaust. It blew much more over the top of the bodywork than down towards the diffuser, like McLaren, Red Bull and Ferrari were doing. This year, somewhat surprisingly, they've followed Red Bull's example, where they are blowing the exhaust at the diffuser, which is down one of these Coanda ramps, which we spoke so much about last year, and then with a tunnel for the rest of the airflow that's going around the sides of the car to pass under so that the two cross over neatly. And obviously it worked quite well for Red Bull once they got it working towards the end of last season. So this is somewhat of surprising. They've really jumped 2 steps in their side pod development. Yeah,
and do you use the word surprise because they had a pretty good car where they ended up in 2012? Is that what you're saying? You know, from your point of view, that was an option for sure. They could have stayed down that same path.
I think they were probably resigned to having to go with some kind of exhaust blown diffuser, because as much as their other exhaust released a lot more power from the engine, and going to a more convoluted exhaust that brought aerodynamic benefits would lose engine power, at the end of the day, downforce counts much more. And so it's surprised that they've really jumped from effectively having no blowing of the diffuser to quite a complicated setup.
And James Allison said in the live stream launch, well, you know, we haven't gone to the new nose to save a little bit of weight. Is that the main thing there, do you think? And what are other teams going to be doing?
I think teams, we know Williams have said already that they'll cover up their nose step. Ferrari is suggesting that the nose will look much the same. I think everyone's going to find their own direction. This fairing that will cover over the step will weigh grams. It's almost 1 or 2 layers of carbon fibre, with the idea that if there's an accident, this just disintegrates into a million pieces and doesn't strike anybody. It's not like a big, strong bit of bodywork. But the step doesn't really create much of an aerodynamic penalty. It creates a very small one, but as James said, the added weight for such a tiny benefit, and obviously the amount of wind tunnel hours and CFD hours that the team would have to devote to looking at that, it's just not worth the effort. So one of the things that's quite clear from the Lotus launch today is that they're focused on the important areas, which is very much the side pods and the exhaust in the back of the car, rather than other sort of things around the front of the car. So we saw the nose step, they've retained the front push rod suspension when everyone is rumoured to be following Ferrari with the pull rod setup. So it looks as though Lotus have focused their attentions in the right areas this year, which I think is a good thing for the team.
What, if you had to take a bet, and I presume you don't know, but if you had to take would you say that they've kept the Kerr's batteries in the same position, or they might be going in an Adrian Newey location, bearing in mind they've gone Red Bull in their side pod shape?
Knowing Lotus, I think they probably kept the batteries underneath the fuel tank rather than putting them around the side and inside the gearboxes. Red Bull and Caterham have followed as well. But again, very little information from the launch, so we'll have to wait for the team to announce a bit more about that, or hopefully we'll see some pictures at Melbourne of the car stripped down.